This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by new Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC. New Intruvix 2 herbicide is an all-in-one formulation that gives you the best of both worlds, fast-burning activity and long-lasting systemic action for more consistent broadleaf control pre-seed to cereals. See your local retailer today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. And, of course, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, hey, special treat today because the entire panel of the show is in one room, in one place at the exact same time. Awesome stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun today breaking down the big issues of the week. UK says, I don't think so, Canada, on a free trade negotiation as Britain walks away from the table. We've also got the Team Canada approach back together again for dealing with trade with the United States, all that and a whole lot more. If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can find us across all the different social media platforms. Or, of course, we'd love to have you call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Might as well bring the panel in now. Why wait? Kelvin Heppner, how's it going?
Going well, Shaun. Good to be here, and good to see, of course, you and Lyndsey in person today.
Yeah, it's nice. We've been meeting and talking, and now we're radio showing.
I'm surprised I still have a voice, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we're coffeeed up. We're ready to go here. Lyndsey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah. It's been a great couple days. And I will say, Shaun, you missed a really good show last week, if I do say so myself.
Is that because I wasn't here?
Maybe. But,
yeah.
No, it was a good one. Got lots of good feedback.
So. Seems every time that Sherilyn Nagel is on the show, I'm not here. Noticing a pattern.
Yeah. She may have requested that. I don't know what you'll have
Well,
to ask her.
I actually booked her, so I sort of did it to myself. But I heard it was a very, very good show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There were some questions.
Questions about what?
Ditch banging.
Yeah, I remember. I didn't know. I heard about this on Wednesday night, and I had no idea what this was. And it involves sledding.
Well, snowmobiling, yes.
Sledding could be like tobogganing.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I call it, do you want a snowmobile or do you want a sled? You want a sled.
I don't know. Okay, but now here's a real controversial topic. Is it a skidoo suit or a snowmobile suit? Because one of them is like Kleenex versus tissue.
I would say snowsuit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think this is one of those regional things.
In Manitoba.
It depends which province or region of the country, which part of North America you're in.
Yeah, if it's a skidoo suit.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you have questions as to what is ditch banging, it is essentially, for the prairies, there aren't a lot of hills. Spoiler alert. Yeah. And so if you want to do some sledding around, I guess there's two versions. So the one is that, you tie a tube to the back of a snowmobile, you drive the snowmobile down the road, trail, whatever, and you slide in the ditch along the snow and the hills there, and away you go.
And the drifts are rock hard.
Yeah, so you bang along the drifts. Yeah. So there you go.
Whatever keeps you occupied and entertained in Moss Bank, Saskatchewan, right
That's
there.
Right.
Exactly.
That is it right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so we could use a whole lot more snow, indeed, as we get a little bit closer to the 2024 growing season. Okay, let's take a break. And the panel is, of course, going to be here for the whole show. And we got lots to chat about, including the cowboy version of Bob McKenzie. We'll get to that when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
It is time for today's product spotlight. So joining me, your host, Lyndsey Smith, is Paul Sinkovich. He's with Vantage Ag. Vantage Ag markets themselves as the foliar experts So let us know why.
Well, Lyndsey, our new sub-nano liquid fertilizer products are specifically designed to be applied in a foliar application. They're really easy to use. You mix them with your pesticides. You can apply quickly and efficiently through your sprayer. It really couldn't be any easier. We totally bypass the soil ecosystem, which eliminates many of the factors that can influence fertilizer efficiency. And so this new technology, we feel, is changing how growers actually think about their fertility strategies with an unheard of efficiency and ROI. It just makes sense.
All right, and for those who want more information about Vantage Ag, where can they go?
They can go to vantage.ag. They can also call us at Vantage Ag at 778-919-3370.
There's power, and then there's superpower. Advancing the unstoppable superpower of pre-seed from New Farm. Take control. Eliminate weed competition and start clean in spring. Manage weeds early in canola, cereals, and pulses. Conquer, Goldwing, Thunderhawk, and Blackhawk EVO. Convenient formulations and multiple modes of action. Add more power to glyphosate, more benefits to your burn down. Go to newfarm.ca/burndown.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Friday RealAg Issues Panel. Hey, time is running out to register for the 2024 Crop Connect Conference. Join us February 14th and 15th, Valentine's Day. No better way to spend time with your Valentine than going to the Crop Connect Conference. That is right. And even better, it's at the Victoria Inn and Convention Center. Nothing says love like the Victoria Inn and Convention Center. It's happening in Winnipeg for insightful speakers, crop-specific information, networking, and a whole lot more. Register today at cropconnectconference.ca. Well, leading into the break, I mentioned that the cowboy version of Bob McKenzie, and so Canistino, Saskatchewan, RealAgriculture's Paige Holmquist is from Canistino, and her dad is Bruce Holmquist, who is pretty prominent guy in cattle circles. Very, very doing a lot of on the policy side. He's always been involved with the Canadian Semitol Association, Beef Breeds Council, a whole bunch of stuff like that. So now Jay Onright from TSN, who has a very lighter side, was in Canistino because Kelvin Canistino was Kraft Hockeyville. Is that correct?
I think so. I'm not sure on the exact promotion, but yeah,
Okay.
He was in Canistino last weekend for one of those national hockey events.
So Jay gets back to Toronto. He's doing Sports Center. He's talking to Bob McKenzie. They're doing an update. And Jay had identified that Bruce Holmquist looks incredibly like TSN's longtime hockey analyst, Bob McKenzie. Mm-hmm. Here's the clip. This is courtesy of TSN.
Before I let you go, I was in Saskatchewan over the weekend, and I have to show you the person I am now referring to as Cowboy Bob McKenzie. His name is Bruce. Terrific guy. What do you think of Bruce, Bob? Because in my opinion, Bruce is pretty much a doppelganger for you.
Well, Bruce looks to me like a very good-looking man. That's the first thing I would say. Maybe not as good-looking as some, but whatever. In any case, nice.
So that is Bob McKenzie. And you know what? They are doppelgangers.
They look alike. Yeah.
Like a lot alike.
And a cowboy version. Bruce usually has the cowboy hat on,
Mm-hmm.
I think, every time I've seen him.
I have never seen Bob with... Sorry, I'm getting too confused.
See, that's how much they look alike.
I have never seen Bruce without that cowboy hat. I think he sleeps in that cowboy hat.
We should ask. So the question is now, can we call Bruce Holmquist Cowboy Bobby Mack?
Absolutely. When I'm going to see him, I'm going to see him next week at NCBA.
Yeah.
First thing I'm saying to him.
Okay, good job.
Yeah.
And get a selfie with him and send it to Jay Onright.
Well, they'll take TSN. That is good. Okay, now on the serious front, Canada's been trying to renegotiate a trade deal with the UK. And you'd think this would be pretty easy. Like we're all, hey, we're a part of the Commonwealth. This should be pretty slick, nice and easy, just like an afternoon. But Britain has walked away from the trade deal, Kelvin. What's the hang-up?
Well, there's a couple different things that are sticking points here. This is a deal that they've been working on since 2022, and it goes back to when Britain left the United Kingdom. Canada, of course, has a trade agreement with the EU, and they implemented a temporary deal in the meantime where Britain enjoys the same access that was negotiated under the Canada-EU deal. But they've been trying to hammer out this longer-term permanent deal. That one was only supposed to be temporary, and The UK has now walked away, and tariff-free market access for British cheeses into Canada has been one of the major issues. Of course, Canada is not happy with the UK's long-standing technical non-tariff barriers, all the phytosanitary stuff around Canadian beef and pork going into the country. And so that is front and center in terms of a lot of the coverage and analysis. There's also some stuff around automobile exports from the UK into Canada. Another sticking point is there's a side letter that was negotiated years ago that expires on March 1st. That gives the British automotive industry the same preferential access into Canada. Also, that was negotiated under the Canada-EU deal, and that expires here in a couple of weeks. So British automakers are potentially facing higher tariffs on their exports into Canada coming up. So
Jaguar.
Yeah, Jaguar would be one example. There might be a few others as well, but basically the Canadian government...
Rolls-Royce.
McLaren. Sean's McLaren is going to be very delayed.
Yeah, and this comes back to all the rules of around origin, same stuff that is an issue in USMCA negotiations or North American trade negotiations as well. So, they've walked away, and Canada's Trade Minister Mary Ng told reporters yesterday that Canada remains at the table, that she's disappointed.
There's just nobody on their side.
There's just nobody on the other side.
Lunch alone.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the UK
I'm here for tea and biscuits. And
UK side, we actually got some quotes from UK government sources yesterday, and they said that they're only coming back if Canada puts a serious offer on the table and shows a desire to make progress.
Okay, but here,
Okay, wait.
the
Yeah,
the Canadian, everyone's going to be like, oh, it's dairy again. Not so... It's a component, but not so fast. As Mucka Singh used to say on Stampede Wrestling, not so fast, Mr. Whalen. Because the Canadian Meat Council was out saying that they represent the meat industry in Canada, including the packers. They appreciate the efforts by both Minister Macaulay and Minister Ng as they continue reinforcing meaningful market access for Canada's beef and pork sectors. Our world-class red meat sector is built off the back of science to protect consumers, and our industry is deserving of bilateral agreements that support increased trade access for our incomparable meat farmers, producers, and processors. So the meat industry, Lyndsey, saying, way to go, Canada.
That's right. So, and this matters because our Canadian product has not been flowing to the UK like it should have. So the numbers here have the UK exported over 4,000 tons of beef to Canada in 2022, worth about 33 million Canadian. Canada did not export any back to the UK.
Not a pound.
So,
not even a wiener.
So that is, I would call that a trade imbalance. I would say that we're not on the receiving end of the benefits of these deals. So my question, Kelvin, is, so the UK wants us to come back with, a fair deal, whatever the case may be. Where's the value for Canada in this? Are there other products that, we have a benefit on this deal that we should be back at this table? Because right now it kind of looks like maybe we don't need this deal.
I think that is kind of the stance that the Canadian government is taking right now, the Canadian negotiators, because we still have this temporary deal in place. Like the terms of the Canada-EU trade agreement are still in place with the UK indefinitely.
Yeah. So we have a deal.
So we have a deal, other than these side letters on cheese that expired December 31st,
right.
Month or just in the last few weeks, and then this auto side letter that expires March 1st. Other than that, the deal is still in place. So, and of course, the UK is also working on joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP.
Which we have a problem with.
Which Canada has a problem with, and all these same groups, the Canadian Cattle Association, the Meat Council, Pork Council, are all asking Canadian MPs to delay approving that because the UK's joining of the CPTPP requires every member country to approve, and that legislation has yet to come forward in Parliament in Canada. And so when it does come forward, Canadian export-focused meat groups, livestock groups are asking parliamentarians to not approve the UK's membership in the CPTPP, again, because of this unfair balance on meat trade.
I blame King Charles.
It seems an easy.
It was a better relationship. It was Queen Elizabeth.
That's true.
And then now we have King Charles, and
so
he has screwed it up.
That's the problem. Okay,
but my understanding is in the UK, Prime Minister Sunak is really facing declining popularity, and so he is looking to maybe play hard here as well to protect British industries. Like there's some politics being played.
And that's a great point. Like this is the same trend we're seeing in countries around the world in terms of domestic politics favoring protectionism and driving more protectionism, and that's what we're seeing here in the UK example. We've seen it in the US. We see it in Canada and in some cases too. And so it's just this move towards domestic politics driving more protectionism, and how do we counter that in terms of an industry that relies on so much trade?
So I have a question. Then it seems like when a leader is dropping in popularity, this seems to be, at least recently anyway, the go-to is like, but does it work?
Well, that's nuance, and that doesn't.
That's not what this show is about.
No, that's what this show's about, but not what politics is always about.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it it resonates with people, right? And so, listen, all countries, like Canada has supply management as an example. Like every country has their version of it. U.S. has sugar, right?
They sure do.
The Brits are doing it from the standpoint of beef and pork. Like every country has this, right? So it's just how do you find the common ground to get around it? Like you talked about, that we're not talking about a trade imbalance. We can, and the thing is, we have a deal where we should have the market access, but they're preventing it through and listen, people are listening in the U.S. U.S. dairy farmers listening to this saying, yeah. It's exactly what you did to us on dairy, you buggers. Right? So it's complicated. Okay, we got to take a break. We got to talk about Team Canada. We're not talking about Sidney Crosby and the hockey gang. We are talking about a free trade approach as Canada gets its Team Canada together, and they're going to, walk into Washington and try to lobby some members of Congress to try to talk about the benefits of free trade. We'll see how that goes. I've got some thoughts. I know the panel does as well. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. And we're giving back. In the past 5 years, Co-op has invested over $1.1 billion in the prairies through building, upgrading, and expanding local facilities. And we've returned over $1.17 billion to Co-op members in the prairies. Co-op, we're all building something for the future. Here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
When you see how fast Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC smacks down narrow-leaved hawksbeard, volunteer canola, kochia, and those other problem weeds, you'll be saying, stronger and faster. Shut the front door. Apply it with glyphosate before planting cereals, and you'll enjoy cleaner fields faster while protecting your future glyphosate use. Cheese and crackers. Just how easy can you get? Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC. Clean is good. See your local retailer.
FP Genetics relentlessly brings innovative new seed genetics to Canadian farms, ensuring growers, breeders, and farmers are supported and viable. Being a valued partner on your farm for decades, you can expect the continuous pursuit of the best genetics. Visit fpgenetics.ca to discover FP's strong portfolio of wheat, durum, barley, oats, peas, and rye, or contact your local FP seed dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region.
Nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's #1 expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. Security and earnings through ownership is the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. Shaun Haney, your host, joined by Lyndsey Smith and Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture. Now, Team Canada, it's back. And Kelvin, fill us in here. What is Team Canada?
This is the federal government's approach to negotiating trade rules with the U.S. as the U.S. presidential election, of course, is looming this fall. And along with that, renegotiation or review of the Canada-U.S.-Mexico trade agreement is around the corner as well. So this week, as part of the cabinet retreat, Prime Minister Trudeau announced that he has tapped Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne and Minister Mary Ng, along with Canada's ambassador to the U.S., Kirsten Hillman, to renew the Team Canada strategy that they used or deployed during the negotiations for the USMCA back with the Trump administration a few years ago. And so it'll be interesting to see. At that time, it was kind of a bipartisan or cross-political party lines effort. Members of different provincial governments, federal governments, key industry and union or leaders were all part of this Team Canada approach, and they met regularly. They had a separate meeting room or a war room, you might say, to use that type of language, dedicated to advancing Canada's interests on the trade front in North America, and so it sounds like they're looking to renew that and revive that. It's a question, though, I guess, and this is something we can talk about, is whether this will be as effective this time around.
Yeah, Lyndsey, it feels like all of a sudden we are starting to wake up here, and maybe it's because it really, really looks like former President Trump is going to be the Republican candidate, and how if it's Trump versus Biden, it's a coin flip, and depending on which poll you do read, I think Canada's waking up to the fact that this renegotiation in front of them on this USMCA deal could be a little sticky.
Yeah, and so I sort of wonder, I'm like, okay, so we're revamping or renewing this Team Canada approach. I'm like, why did we stop? But anyway, it just seems a bit silly that, we have to make a point of doing this. But I hope that it's, perhaps in enough time, but it does sort of feel like a bit of a scramble kind of last minute, and that this has been looming for a while, and yes, there's some time to go. But I guess, they had the cabinet meeting last week, the retreat, and they've come out, ahead of Parliament starting to sit again next week with this announcement of this is what they're going to be doing. So I do hope it's an indication that, this is putting this renegotiation back on the radar of the government, and that they come into the negotiation perhaps ready. I guess we'll have to wait and see, of course, what happens with Bill C-282 ahead of those negotiations starting, and where that will put Team Canada, of course, in.
This isn't just about the renegotiation of USMCA. Trump has talked about this 10% tariff on all imports and stuff like that. So it could be a strategy to deal with some of those types of barriers that are, and the Democratic candidate will likely be coming forward, if it's President Biden, looking like it will be. Both parties in the U.S. are talking about protectionism and favoring made in U.S. type products and that type of thing. So it's in Canada's interest to, I think, have this, like you said, Lyndsey, better late than never. This should have started earlier, but it's in Canada's interest to not just prepare for the renegotiation, but also counter all these other measures that are potentially on the horizon. Yeah,
and we're going to hear a lot about this, the 10% tariff. We're going to hear a lot about trying to fix the USMCA, because we're looking at about a 260 or 280-day election campaign. We've got a long time between now and November. So there's going to be a lot of stump speeches from both sides, talking about how we need to save this industry, fix that industry, and one of the ways that we do that is tariffs and domestic production, domestic jobs. So it's going to be a long process. I do wonder, and I said this I was at the CAP meeting earlier this week. I was asked after we finished the show. Actually, it was Todd Lewis from APAS stood up, and he's asking me some questions in front of the audience, and he asked about the renegotiation of this deal. And I had said then that I think Canada's being very naive to this, that we do need to get started and start to implement our strategy, because this would be very, very difficult. But I also question whether or not this Team Canada approach, Canadian members of Team Canada are going to, will they get the same reception in D.C. or at the state level as they got previously when we renegotiated the NAFTA deal? Because both sides of the aisle have a more protectionist flavor to them right now. It's not just about Trump. This is about members of Congress. This is at the state level with the governors. I think there's need to be cautious here that there might be a little bit of pushback or more pushback against Canadian officials than there was previously. It's going to be tough.
Oh, exactly. I think it has changed significantly, and Canada, this Team Canada is soon, whoever's going to be on the team is soon going to find that out. It's going to be tougher to get meetings. It's going to be tougher to have a positive reception in those meetings in terms of they're going to try to emphasize trade with specific states and specific regions of the U.S. and Congress, different territories and jurisdictions. Like, hey, this is an important trade. Last time around, they came up with that list of whether it was mattresses or bourbon or different products that were relevant to different congressmen and lawmakers in the U.S. They're going to try to do that again, but like you said, Shaun, there's the sentiment around trade and favoring made in the U.S. products has changed from the last time around.
Now, Minister McCauley, and in the last 2 weeks, we saw Minister McCauley and USTA Secretary Tom Vilsack get together, and they discussed a bunch of issues, Lyndsey. And it's interesting that because some of the things that were discussed, Proposition 12, product of the USA. Of course, they also, the US side brought up the dairy, the TRQ allocations, even though they lost the last dispute panel. There are things to work. This product of the USA, I think that is one of the keys here that Canada's going to have to be talking about.
Right, and so we've been following this for a little while now, of course, because certainly on the beef side, the country of origin labeling is not a new issue between Canada and the U.S. Of course, the mandatory country of origin labeling was years of fighting back and forth on whether or not it was allowed. It shouldn't have been. Then there was all the fighting, and so. This is one of those ones that, I'm glad to see the Ag Minister down there having these conversations well ahead of time. It is one aspect, though, that I think that there is a lot of support for from certain sectors in the U.S. for sure. And I'm not sure, I know that, they're trying to, and Vilsack has said it's got to be trade compliant, and they're trying to make it voluntary and keep it that way. But, that's not, if it becomes de facto mandatory, then it is mandatory. So we run into a lot of issues. But I think, to Kelvin's point, and overall to your point as well, is that I don't think it matters who wins the election in November. We are moving much more towards protectionism within the U.S., and our government is going to have to work very hard to try and keep those channels open and that communication open to keep trade going.
USDA's final rule on voluntary product USA labeling is currently under review at the Office of Management and Budget. So I had one listener say to me this week that, you know what, we're going to do much better when Poilievre is negotiating this free trade agreement than Trudeau. I think that's a giant leap, Kelvin. I'm not so sure. I'm not saying he's better or he's worse. I think it's the same level of difficulty no matter who's in that prime minister spot.
Yeah, I think in many ways it wouldn't make a difference, but I do think that there's maybe a little bit of a difference where the Conservatives realize the importance of trade, or it's higher on their list of priorities relative to what the Liberal government has shown in power over the last 9 years.
Does that mean they give in quicker? Because I think there's pressure.
Well, it depends.
There's pressure.
But potentially, yes. Yeah, it could mean that. But I just think that they're going to invest more resources. Like, look at our trade minister in Canada and how many different titles and other things she has on her plate in terms of responsibilities. Yeah. It shows how not high on the list trade is as a priority in export market access. And I think that there would be more people in the Conservative Party, if they form government, that would have an emphasis on that in terms of how it fits into even their political ideology and how markets work and that type of thing.
Could we actually get the Canadian Trade Enforcement Officer that we've been talking about?
You know what? Why don't you ask, Shaun? Put it in now. Put in your request now.
Yeah.
And see.
Well, we also heard this week that when the Senate returns, I think it's February 7th or 9th, this whole discussion about Bill 282 is going to be coming up very quickly. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be interesting for the Senate too, because that's the reverse. So Canadian agriculture industry was asking for the Senate to do not delay this, do not interrupt, get 234 through.
Yep.
With 282, we're asking for the opposite, or the one side of the industry is asking for the different.
So it is, and we've mentioned this a few times. Is that okay? So our Senate, sober second thought, not supposed to get in the way of what Parliament wants to do, and also not supposed to get into the taxation side. So that's one of the things that makes 234 somewhat different from 282. However, certain sectors are essentially, yes, asking the Senate to get involved with 282 at the Senate level to potentially not move this forward. So they're different, but there is a similarity. One change, though, when the Senate does come back, is there's a new name in the ranks.
There is. Mary Robinson.
Yes, that many of us know.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool.
If she is, Kelvin and I were talking about this on Wednesday. I'm not sure when she is sworn in officially as a senator. If she is in the Senate before the 282 talks start, that's going to be dropped in the deep end.
Yeah,
she's going to have, as the former president of the CFA, the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, she's going to have a lot of different stakeholders that she worked with a lot, pulling her in numerous directions, saying, "Mary, do the right thing." Mm-hmm. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, some of these senators are definitely going to be between a rock and a hard place when it comes to figuring out where they stand on C-282. And we saw the same thing in the House of Commons with some of the Conservative MPs who actually voted in favor of it or chose to abstain rather than voting against, and things like that too, where, now we'll have to see whether some of these senators, Senator Rob Black would be another one who is deep roots in the agriculture community, Senator Plett, the Conservative leader in the Senate from Southeast Manitoba, which is both an intensive pork and poultry and dairy part of the country.
Even Pamela Wallen in Saskatchewan.
Yeah. So there's going to be all kinds of cognitive dissonance, I think, in terms of these senators trying to figure out which side they're going to land on with C-282. And we should just take a step back. This is the bill that is supposed to remove the chance of Canadian negotiators putting any supply management concessions on the table in trade talks. So it could be repealed through legislation, but then it has to go through the whole parliamentary process and through a bill through Parliament, that type of thing, if it gets across the finish line. So this is something that certainly is meant to create additional barriers for making more concessions on supply managed sectors.
There is concern that if Canada passes this bill, it actually is like from a U.S. standpoint, it actually is. It'll actually
poke the bear,
increase the U.S. push in this regard.
And to Kelvin's point about, so if this passes, how quickly it gets implemented becomes a question, because then is this at play in the NAFTA, in the CUSMA or USMCA renegotiation, right?
Big deal.
So even if a subsequent government may repeal this, it would be in play for then. And so, yes, and many people have said that it just essentially ties Canada's negotiators' hands and creates just an adversarial relationship of basically saying, and so does that mean the U.S. just comes back and goes twice as hard at something because they've been told, no, you may not.
Yeah. It's sort of like if you tell your kids they can't go out on a Friday night. What do they do?
They sneak out the window.
I wonder whether this doesn't get slow played until an election is called and it drops off the order paper. Whether that isn't going to be the least politically damaging overall scenario here. So
could be.
To me, that is one of the possible outcomes here with C-282 right now.
Yeah. Well, Lyndsey used the phrase sober second thought, which would allude that somebody was not sober when they passed the legislation in the first place. That might be apropos. well placed.
We'll have to ask if that's what that means. I don't know if it's true.
That's what I would take from it. Okay, we got to take a break. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Does your N stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca. Whether you're in a career within an organization, starting your own business, looking for your dream job, running your own farming operation, operating a company in ag or food, or want to hone your overall life skills, this conference is for you. Celebrating over 10 years of bringing women in ag together, join the Advancing Women Conference in Calgary on March 17th, 18th, and 19th. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Friday. Having some fun. It's great to have everybody all in the same studio. This is great. Co-op knows your community because we live here too. Our teams are your trusted partners with a range of expertise to help support your entire farm operation. Co-op, here for your farm, here for your family. Learn more at co-op.crs/farm. And of course, that's Saskatchewan, right?
That's right.
Yeah, well, and a little bit in Alberta. Co-op's a little bit in Alberta.
So Saskatchewan has a few really wonderful institutions, and Co-op is one of them.
Yeah.
Manitoba, too.
Yeah.
I guess they do, yeah. Speaking of Manitoba, I was in your beautiful province this week.
Nice.
Yes.
Enjoy the winter paradise?
Yes. It was milder.
Maybe not in Winnipeg, but when you leave Winnipeg, it's winter paradise.
One could say that. Yeah, it was great. I was at the CAT meeting. and it was really well attended. There was a lot. So one thing I noticed, I emceed. We did a live broadcast of the show that you heard here, but then I emceed the banquet, and the amount of MLAs, members of the legislature, that on both sides of the aisle that were at that banquet, it was over 10. I was really impressed.
Yeah, CAP has a really good connection with the provincial government, I'd say, compared to, when you look at kind of farm groups across the country, CAP has, their relationship with the province is really close, and it doesn't matter whether it's the NDP or the Progressive Conservatives in power. Their banquet always has a large turnout. I would say 10 is a low number in terms of what's been at that banquet historically from the provincial legislature.
Yeah.
And you always have the provincial ag minister there, the ag critic from the opposition is there, and were they even sitting at the same table, Shaun?
Well, that's the interesting thing I want to point out that makes Manitoba different.
Mm-hmm. They were at the same table. Because have you read the license plate? It says Friendly Manitoba.
Well, yeah, and
it carries through.
As somebody from Alberta, I would say that if we were at an ag banquet, the ag minister, the shadow minister, and the deputy minister are not sitting together.
That's right.
Right? Well, the deputy minister and the minister would be, but in fact, it was. I mentioned Todd Lewis earlier. Him and I had both talked about it. That I think this is kind of unique, and maybe in
Atlantic Canada
would happen.
Yeah.
It ain't happening in Alberta. It ain't happening in Saskatchewan. I don't think it's happening in Ontario. And it kind of shows that, it's not a negative. I think it's actually a real positive that, hey, we have some political differences. We can break bread together.
Yep. And I want to observe too, when I think nationally, what do we see? But so I would say the CFA meeting coming up soon.
We're going to be there.
We're going to be there. Absolutely. And they have all the, all the shadow ministers come. Now, they all speak separately, and I don't think they sit at the same table, but at least they'll all be there. So I was looking at the lineup, and we'll see all the shadow ministers for each of the political parties will be there, which is, it's great to have everybody in one spot.
Next week is going to Orlando.
Yep.
CattleCon, NCBA.
Yep.
It's going to be fun. It's one of my favorite meetings of the year.
So the biggest question, though, are you going to get a new hat?
Or boots.
Going back to the old days of RealAgriculture.
Shoes and a hat.
There's a really, really good one with Barry Wasco and Barry, rancher from East End, Saskatchewan, and we shot a video of Barry buying a new hat.
Mm-hmm.
There's still people commenting on that video.
It's true. It's from a long time ago.
And one time I did one of me buying boots.
That's right.
My wife made me return them.
Oh,
I don't know if I ever told that story. They were a beautiful alligator skin. They looked nice, Kelvin. They were sharp. They were your your Sunday go to meeting outfit. Mm-hmm. You could wear them to church or after. They're just perfect. My wife didn't think so.
No.
So there's this video on YouTube. It probably has tens of thousands of views. I don't even own the bloody boots.
So I'll be honest, though, Shaun, I cannot imagine an outfit you would wear that you would wear boots with.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There is that. Yes. Yeah. I'm not. Well, maybe for that. No. Even for the when I host the Stampede event, the Agri Party during the Stampede. Yeah, I don't wear boots.
Yeah, I was going to say, that would be maybe the only time, and you don't.
Well, and I have they really hurt my heels. I have very soft heels.
We have gotten very off track.
Way off track.
But we have established that Shaun is not a cowboy. And so we can move on now.
Yeah. I'm no Bruce Holmquist.
There you go.
There you go.
He's a real cowboy.
Cowboy Bobby.
Looking forward to NCBA next week. We're going to be there with Alltech, broadcasting from the trade show floor, which is going to be a lot of fun with our friends at Alltech. So looking forward to it. If you do see me on site there at the conference, make sure you do say hello, because I know we have a lot of our audience that'll be heading down to Orlando to see Mickey and talk about the beef business in North America. And I'm sure we'll have some conversations about this upcoming free trade agreement, the Product of USA label. There's going to be a lot of stuff to discuss next week in Orlando, Florida. Bank of Canada made a decision to, I guess, Kelvin, just say, we're going to pause.
Yep, exactly. For the fourth consecutive time now, they have held their rate, not increased nor decreased. And this time, though, they took out some of the language in their written statement regarding the chances of potentially raising the rate if needed. So this is kind of a sign that the the attention or focus of discussions has shifted from whether interest rates need to increase further. Now it's about how long they need to stay at this level before they can begin to be lowered. And so the talk is still middle of the year in terms of when they could start gradually lowering the policy rates. So I'm not sure whether middle of the year has maybe shifted from June to maybe like August or September now. But I think a lot of these decisions, other data that we've been getting over the last couple of weeks, especially in Canada, not so much on the U.S. side of the border, but in Canada, there's reasons for them to continue to delay cuts to that target rate.
Because I'm kind of a geek, I listen to Bloomberg Radio a lot on Sirius. I need a life. And one of the things I heard this week, Lyndsey, is there was an economist on there that said, from a U.S. perspective, that it's not how quickly we'll start to see rates come down. He disputed the pace at which they'll happen. So a lot of people have been expecting, like, we're going to start dropping in March, and we'll do it again the next month and the next month.
Keep going.
Yeah,
And
not necessarily.
And he talked about, like, I could see a cut in March, and I could then see like a pause, and then maybe a cut or another pause. It's going to be a slow process because they may not have to cut as fast as people maybe want them to.
Well, I think that is very true, and I think that's the thing that we need to be preparing ourselves and our businesses for, is that, it's sort of like a roller coaster, or imagine it's like crop prices per se. They go up quick, and then they go up slow, and then they slide on down really quick. We're going to see, I think, this pause, and if we see a reduction, or when we see a reduction, I don't think we should count on the fact that it will be over and over and over and subsequent, and we'll be back down to where we were, 18 months ago. I don't think that's really the case. I did hear, I'm not as geeky as you, but I did listen to some analysis on this from RBC, and their analysis put, maybe we might be at a full point by sometime next year of a deduction.
I think that's what the bond market
by 25.
By 25.
Okay.
So keep in mind, we could be looking at a reduction, but not necessarily over and over and over again.
And like a month ago, the markets, I think, were pricing in about a 1.5% decline by the new year, and now it's down to 1.
Yeah,
maybe even less.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. The Canadian dollar, we're at 74.21. So the high is 75.59. So
to me that gives the Bank of Canada more room to delay cuts if the Federal Reserve goes ahead with cuts.
But it will strengthen our dollar even more, though, won't it?
Oh yeah, never mind. It'd be the other way around.
Yeah,
the other way around. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think the key here, though, and I've been, this week I had a couple conversations with farmers that are, looking to this year for sure, but thinking about longer term. And I think the point here is, anyone who's expecting perhaps interest rates to go way back down to where they were even 2 years ago, like, we're likely in for a much longer stretch of more significant interest rates. So, like, this idea that, you just got to wait it out a year and then everything will be back to what it was.
No.
Yeah, no. Like, we need to be working in, the assumption that this is the environment we're in for several years. Like, we have to run our businesses that way.
You know what I wish would go back to how it was? The corn market.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Like, rough road. I was listening to Market Day Report this morning here on Rural Radio 147, and Brian Hoops was on, and he was talking about the markets, and he was talking about, and right now, Dees corn trading around 480 or 476 and a quarter. As I'm looking at this, he talked about if you see Dees corn get up to 525, be unloading some of your, be selling into that. It's been a rough road for commodity prices.
Yeah, corn, canola in Western Canada as well. It's down well off of its highs of earlier this year or last year. I mean, and it's all around. It's in. Like Lyndsey said, on the cost side of things, with interest rates where they are and mortgages and loans needing to be renewed, and there's certainly some pressure on margins heading into this this crop year.
And I think in Canada and the U.S., farmer is somewhat undersold. Maybe that's kind of the comment. And I'm not. That's not my analysis. That's what I keep on hearing from market analysts when I'm listening to Real Radio throughout the day. Like everybody else should be too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we just Nice plug. And we just ran, an informal poll, but we usually put a new one up every week. And on RealAgriculture, certainly asking sort of where farmers were at as far as how much they do price throughout the year. And over 50%, they said that they don't price much before fall. So that I know it's just, a poll, not a survey, but it's an indication, I think, of, I would love to know if we are evolving where farmers are more hesitant to price crop or less so. I think that would be an interesting question to ask.
Well, actually, we got the results of the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index coming out next week.
Imagine.
Good segue.
Yeah, thanks.
We're going to have those results next week. So we'll be able to pick some stuff out of there that will give us an indication, because farmers' expectations on the direction of the market has really bounced around the last 18 months. So I have no prediction, really, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. The confidence in their strategy has been somewhat flat, but it's the direction of the market that has been all over the place. And I don't blame them, because I think this has been an incredibly difficult time to market through. Easy to have hindsight 2020, much more difficult when we're thinking out front and looking into our crystal balls. Okay, when we come back, we've got more to discuss here on RealAg Radio, including it is a championship weekend in the NFL. And so Lyndsey's going to give us her lead pipe locks when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Through a growing storm of kochia, cleavers, chickweed, and more, there's a clear path. Introducing Oxbow, a versatile cereal broadleaf herbicide that gets the job done. Powered by Duplisan technology, Oxbow is your workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds. With flexibility in timing, rates, and recropping options, your path is clear. Find your way on the path of least resistance at newfarm.ca/Oxbow.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
You deal with a lot of uncertainties on your farm. Lyndsey, you do. Like in the sheep business, are there any certainties?
There are zero.
Exactly.
Yes.
Managing risk should not be one of them, Lyndsey. MMP's ag team specializes in risk management. Visit mmp.ca to learn how you can stay ahead of the game and plan for the unknown. Lyndsey's, I can hear her on her phone. She's dialing MMP right now.
That's right. Giving them a call.
Okay. Now, before we get to her lead pipe locks when it comes to football, earlier this week, we were at the Northern Pulse Growers meeting, and it was great. We've done that meeting twice here the last 2 years, and a lot of interest in pulse crops in Montana and North Dakota. We have a lot of listeners in that area too, so it's great to have chats with them. And one of the theories I have, this is my speculation, Lyndsey.
There's a lot of that
I am
sometimes.
speculating. I bet if we actually... on common crops, common livestock, I bet you if we actually looked at the lack of collaboration, I know provincially we see lack of collaboration sometimes. I think there's massive amounts to be gained if we put our heads together more, research, especially when it comes to diseases. I think of phenomyces.
Phenomyces, yeah, for sure.
Between even states and provinces, countries.
Yeah.
But there'd be I bet you it would disappoint us, the lack of... Like, I know some of the researchers do, but I bet you there's a lot of room for even better.
So we have a couple examples where there is, cross-border collaboration, but they're pretty few and far between. So, especially as you mentioned on the pulse side, growing regions don't care about a border, right? The soil type, the weather, all those things, they're going to be the same, 10 miles either direction, regardless of a border. So, yeah, I think there's a lot that, of course, can be learned from each other, but really there's a huge amount of benefit if they actually work together. So the one thing I can say, proudly for Ontario, now my home province, we see it with the Great Lakes Yen project, where we've got Michigan and Ontario working together, right? So, and so they're taking exactly that, similar growing conditions, similar and the same crop type, all that sort of stuff, and comparing and seeing what they can learn from each other. So, yeah, I think there's a ton of opportunity opportunity for more of the north-south, and of course between provinces, etc. Because, and let's face it, and we've talked about this before with our producer groups and those sorts of things. The research dollar has to be stretched, so collaboration is one way to do that.
We got a lot of silos in this industry, and they're not just at the dairy farms. They're all over the place.
Put that on a shirt.
A lot of it is legislative, though, where
what
we have that in Canada between provinces with provincial crop organizations that could work together more if it wasn't for provincial rules in terms of how checkoffs and levies work. The same goes with states in the U.S. and of course, nationally, crossing the 49th parallel as well.
Yeah, if I was ag minister, I would try to encourage groups to, because you're right. We're seeing cutbacks in research. We're trying to stretch the dollars. What better way to do it than leveraging those dollars between states and provinces, federally? Like I don't know. And somebody's going to get a bunch of emails now and say, "Well, you didn't know." I'm just saying I know there does exist some collaboration.
Yes. Yeah.
My expectation is it just could be a little bit better.
I think that, like Lyndsey said, the researchers and agronomists themselves, I think, are doing a fair bit of individually,
but not a coordinated
do cross
effort.
line boundaries and political jurisdiction lines. But it's the structures that are funding it, that's where we run into the barriers on.
Well, and also what happens is, this research was funded by Alberta.
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't want,
Everybody wants credit for where they've put their money.
Yeah. I have a rude word for it. I'm not going to use it.
Okay, that's
anyway.
Good discipline. Okay, but we still have some time here. We've got football this weekend. It's happening on Sunday. First game is at 3 Eastern. The second game is at 6:30 Eastern. For everybody following, I'm looking forward to it. I know my dogs are really excited to watch football all day Sunday.
Sure they are.
My wife, not so much.
That's right.
But she will be excited for the first game because the Chiefs are playing.
Right.
And she's only a football fan when the Chiefs are playing. So the Chiefs,
along with millions of others.
Yeah,
Sean,
exactly.
Can we just stop?
No, all hail Taylor. She's
what?
amazing.
That's why I'm picking the Ravens. I want this to be over.
So, okay, that's fine. You can, but you're going to lose. So I will tell you that the Chiefs are absolutely going to win.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely they are. And also the Lions. So,
well, yeah, you're just going for the popular pick there.
no, a
popular
lion,
but underdog.
Yeah,
both, right?
exactly. Well,
on the betting line, I think that'd be an underdog.
Yeah, Ravens are favored by 4. 49ers are favored by 7.5.
Yeah. I don't know what that means, but I'm just telling you that I think it's going to be the Lions and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and I think that the Chiefs are going to win, but I kind of want the Lions to win. I'll be honest.
Who are you taking, Kelvin?
I'm not sure.
Well, we were talking about collaboration on research. He was looking up what analysts are. I saw him.
He just Googled who is playing in the Super Bowl.
No.
Not who's playing in the Super Bowl. I wanted to know what the odds were right now.
Yeah, okay.
And because in line with our poll on RealAgriculture.com, San Francisco has the largest spread in terms of favored by the odds makers. So, and that's also, I think they're also the leading picker the last time we checked on the website as well in terms of the poll. And Christian McCaffrey is
amazing,
so much fun to watch. Yeah,
legit, amazing.
I don't understand why they didn't use him more last game. And
he's been fighting a bit of an injury.
Okay. So, but scientifically though, they have the worst logo. So, of course, you can pick the 49ers.
I've been to that stadium. I saw a soccer match there, AC Milan versus Liverpool. It's a beautiful stadium.
Okay.
Yeah, beautiful stadium. Yeah. I hate to do this to our friends in Iowa because Brock Purdy, Iowa State, basically local legend at this point.
Are you picking Detroit?
I want Detroit to win.
Yeah.
I kind of do, too.
They have a lot of fans, of course, in Ontario and
they do.
In our
and I'll give them a shout-out. If I pick the 49ers over the Lions, I'll tell you right now, Steve Denise would be emailing. He would be phoning in.
Immediately. You're like, you monster.
So he's bullied me. I have to go with the Lions.
He's bullied without even talking.
Yeah,
exactly. Steve's in my head.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting, our poll results so far, and everybody out there can vote. Go to RealAgriculture.com, scroll down, you can find it. They've picked the 49ers. In the Ravens are the least picked.
Yes. So, the Lions after that.
I think that defense chews up Mahomes and all their drop passes on the Chiefs.
They have Taylor. They can't lose.
I guess it depends how many times Jason Kelce takes his shirt off.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who I really like. He's
great. I'd go for beers with him.
He's funny.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate. This is fun doing it in person.
It
so You guys have a good weekend. Even though we're going to be hanging the rest of the day. It's just have a good weekend, Kelvin.
Yeah, see you in 10 minutes.
Lyndsey, you as well.
Thanks.
Okay, if you have feedback on today's show, you could send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. If you're really angry, you can email lsmith@realagriculture.com.
Yes.
You can also call the RealAg feedback line. It is 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and we'll chat with you again next week. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by new Intruvix 2 herbicide from FMC. New Intruvix 2 herbicide for cereals delivers outstanding control of the toughest broadleaf weeds like volunteer canola, narrow-leaved hawksbeard, and kochia. See your local retailer for more information today.